Willow Creek was one of those towns where everybody knew everybody, or at least thought they did. That evening, the sky hung low with golden light as traffic drifted down Main Street. At first glance, everything was normal, calm, but parked by the side of the road was a rusty Dodge Ram pickup and two police officers standing beside it. To most people, it was just another routine stop. But what no one knew was that inside that truck sat a man who guarded the soul of America, a soldier whose footsteps echoed through marble halls at Arlington. A tomb guard. His name, Sergeant Caleb Marshall. Age, 32. Quiet, reserved, trained to be invisible and unforgettable. He had just finished a 24-hour shift guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier, where every salute holds the weight of sacrifice. And now, he was driving home. No uniform, no signs of glory, just jeans, a t-shirt, and boots worn smooth from marching. But that didn't matter to the police. The red and blue lights behind him told him all he needed to know. He wasn't being seen for who he was, just for what he looked like, a lone man in an old truck. He pulled over. In control. Officer Emily Carter, young and brash, approached the window. "You were going a bit fast," she said with suspicion in her tone. "I was within the speed limit," Caleb replied, handing over his license and registration with a steady hand. She glanced at the truck's body. "This thing even legal? It passes inspection every year," Caleb said plainly. "Step out of the vehicle," she ordered. Caleb obeyed, no protest, no hesitation, just quiet obedience. The crowd started to form across the street. Locals from Parker's Grill leaned out. Some pulled out their phones. Some smirked. Most had no idea who this man was. Emily walked around the truck slowly, tapping it as she spoke. "What do you do for a living?" "I serve in the Army. Fort Myer, Army." "Huh, you don't look like much," she said. "You out of uniform or something?" "I'm off duty." A pause, her tone sharpened. "You've been drinking. You were weaving." "I haven't had anything. I was driving straight." His voice was still calm, but calm for her liking. "Hands on the truck." He turned and placed his hands on the tailgate. Calm still, he'd been through worse. As Emily began the pat-down, her fingers stopped. She'd felt something. She pulled out a small silver badge. "What's this, a souvenir?" Caleb answered without flinching. "It's my badge. The badge of a tomb guard earned through blood, sweat, and 9 months of perfection." Emily barely looked at it. She tossed it back like it meant nothing. "Stay here, we're running your info." And just like that, a hero was treated like a threat. From across the street, Linda Parker, owner of Parker's Grill, watched with rising disbelief. She knew that man, knew his quiet dignity, and now, she saw something deeply wrong. Without hesitation, she picked up the phone and dialed Fort Myer. "This is Linda Parker. One of your tomb guards is being harassed by the police outside my diner. His name is Caleb Marshall. You need to send someone immediately." The sun dipped lower as tension in the street rose. Officer Carter stood stiffly by the cruiser, eyes fixed on Caleb Marshall as she ran his information. Her partner, Officer Hayes, lingered near Caleb, shifting from foot to foot. He looked uncomfortable, unsure. "Sorry about all this," he mumbled, glancing at the growing crowd. "Just doing our job, you know." Caleb didn't answer right away. He'd heard that line before. His gaze remained calm, locked on the horizon. Not defiant, just centered like a soldier trained to be still while the world spun around him. "I understand," Caleb finally said. Duty." Across the street, whispers rippled through the crowd. "He looks like he's just trying to get home. Why are they messing with him? That truck ain't hurting anybody. He must have done something right." The phones kept recording. Everyone had their version, but none of them knew the truth. None of them saw the years of service in his shoulders, the burden of silence in his eyes, the honor tucked in his wallet. Officer Carter returned, her expression unreadable. "Your record's clean," she said, "but I'm not convinced you're fit to drive. You're coming with us to the station. Sobriety test." Caleb didn't flinch. His voice was steady, but this time, there was iron behind it. "On what grounds, officer?" "I've complied with everything. I haven't broken any law." Carter stepped closer, hand resting on her holster. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she snapped. "Get in the cruiser now." Her partner touched her arm. "Emily, maybe we should." She shook him off. "No, he's being uncooperative. That's enough." From the crowd, a voice rang out. "This is ridiculous," a young woman shouted. Phone raised. "He didn't do anything." An older man muttered, "Here we go again. Some poor guy, wrong place, wrong time." But Caleb stood still. "No panic, no retreat. If you have a charge," he said calmly, "state it. If not, I'm leaving." Carter's cheeks flushed red. "You're under arrest for obstructing an officer. Hands behind your back." And just then, the rumble. Low, deep, growing louder. Engines. Big ones. Around the corner came two military Humvees, kicking up dust, rolling in fast. They didn't slow down until they came to a precise halt just feet from the scene. 8 soldiers stepped out in formation, uniforms crisp, posture flawless, and leading them. Captain Laura Bennett, eyes sharp, voice sharper. She marched straight up to Caleb, ignoring the police completely. "Sergeant Marshall," she said, saluting sharply. "We were informed of a situation. Are you all right?" Caleb returned the salute without hesitation. "I'm fine, Captain. Just a misunderstanding." And suddenly, the energy shifted. The crowd stopped whispering. Phones were still up, but now, they recorded with silence. Officer Carter's mouth dropped open. Her sunglasses slid down her nose. Officer Hayes took a step back. Captain Bennett turned to face them, her voice calm, cold, and commanding. "Who's in charge here?" I am," Carter stammered. "Officer Emily Carter, Willow Creek PD. We stopped this man for a routine check. He was uncooperative." Bennett's eyes narrowed. "This man," she said, pointing at Caleb, "is Sergeant Caleb Marshall, a tomb guard with the 3rd Infantry Regiment, one of the most disciplined soldiers in this nation, and you threatened to arrest him." She paused, letting her words hang in the air. "Did you even ask who he was?" Carter's face paled. "I didn't know. You didn't ask." Bennett cut her off. "You saw a man in an old truck and assumed." The silence was louder than any siren. The crowd stared. And for the first time, Emily Carter realized just how wrong she'd been. Asterisk. Captain Laura Bennett stood tall, her uniform spotless, her presence commanding. The soldiers behind her didn't move a muscle. They stood in silent formation, not to intimidate, but to remind everyone of who they were standing behind. Officer Carter swallowed hard. Her voice cracked under the weight of the silence. "I didn't know he was a tomb guard," she muttered. "You didn't know," Bennett repeated slowly, "because you didn't care to find out." She took a step closer. "Do you even understand what it means to wear that badge?" she asked, pointing to the silver emblem now resting in Caleb's palm. "That small badge takes 9 months of relentless training to earn. You memorize 35 pages of history. You drill in heat, cold, rain. Every step, every second, must be perfect. Because the soldiers buried at the Tomb of the Unknowns didn't get a second chance, they didn't get a name." Bennett's voice softened for a moment, and he, she said, motioning to Caleb, stood for them every day. With honor, with silence, with discipline. She turned her gaze back to Carter. "And you reduced him to a suspicion." Carter looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Officer Hayes stepped forward, clearly shaken. "Captain, we didn't mean any disrespect. We were just following procedure." Bennett looked him dead in the eyes. "Your job," she said, "is to protect and serve, not profile and assume. What you did here wasn't procedure, it was prejudice in uniform." Across the street, the mood shifted. The crowd, once curious, now stood with quiet shame. The young woman with the phone lowered her device, whispering, "That's a tomb guard." An older man near the curb said, "Should have known." That posture, that stare, that calm. Caleb stood silently through it all. He didn't gloat, he didn't scowl, he didn't speak. Finally, Captain Bennett looked to him. "Sergeant, do you want to press charges?" Caleb shook his head. "No ma'am, I just want to go home." Bennett nodded, but she wasn't done. "Officer Carter," she said firmly, "you owe this man an apology." The silence grew thicker than ever. Emily took off her sunglasses. Her face was flushed with embarrassment. She looked at Caleb, and, for the first time, she really looked. "Sergeant Marshall," she said softly, "I'm sorry. I judged you without knowing who you were. I made assumptions, and I let pride guide my actions." Caleb nodded slowly. His voice was calm, measured, and honest. "Apology accepted. But next time, don't assume. Ask." He glanced around at the still crowd. "You never know who you're dealing with." Officer Hayes stepped in, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've seen videos of tomb guards," he said sheepishly. "Didn't know I'd ever meet one. You guys are something else." Again, Caleb simply nodded. Double quotes, "No harm done. Just do better." Linda Parker, still watching from outside the diner, clapped her hands. "All right, folks. Show's over," she called out. "Come get some coffee, and let this man get on with his life." The crowd began to disperse. Phones were lowered. Conversations returned. But something had changed. Respect had been restored. That as Caleb walked toward his truck, the soldiers parted for him, a corridor of quiet honor. He climbed in, started the engine, and drove off slowly. The rumble of the Dodge Ram faded into the hum of a town that had just learned a lesson about judgment and dignity. That evening, the air inside Parker's grill was filled with quiet murmurs and the smell of fresh coffee. Caleb sat at a corner booth, his posture as straight as ever, a steaming mug of black coffee in front of him. Linda had insisted he come in and sit down for a moment. Across from him sat Officers Carter and Hayes. Their sunglasses were gone. Their eyes, now filled, not with authority, but with regret and curiosity. Linda poured them each a cup. "You all got things sorted out?" she asked gently. Caleb gave a small nod. Getting there was a pause. An awkward, heavy silence. Then Emily leaned forward, her voice softer than before. "Can I ask you something, Sergeant?" Caleb looked up. "Of course. What's it like being a tomb guard?" Caleb paused. He set his cup down carefully, as if even the act of answering required perfect form. It's not about me, he said. It's about the soldiers who gave everything and never got their names back. He glanced out the window, eyes distant but focused. You walk for them, you stand for them. Every step, every turn. Every salute, it's not yours. It's theirs. You don't speak, you don't blink, you don't break focus. Emily listened, eyes wide. Caleb continued, you trained for 9 months just for the chance to try. You memorized 35 pages of history. You polish your uniform until you can see your soul in it, and even then, it's never good enough. He gave a faint smile. You don't guard a tomb. You guard a promise that those who gave all won't be forgotten. Michael exhaled slowly. That's intense. I mean, I didn't know it was like that. Emily nodded. Her voice was low now, almost a whisper. I became a cop to help people, she said, but today I didn't help. I judged, I assumed, and I disrespected someone who deserved more. She looked directly at Caleb. Why didn't you say something? Why not tell us who you were? Caleb shrugged gently. My badge speaks for itself. If I have to explain it, maybe I'm not doing my job right. Linda, listening from behind the counter, chimed in. That's Caleb for you. He's been coming here for years, never brags. I only found out he was a tomb guard because I saw that badge one day when he paid for coffee. Emily smiled faintly. I want to do better. I need to. Caleb met her eyes and said simply, that's all any of us can do. There was no lecture, no grand speech, just a quiet truth, a truth earned through discipline, humility, and the weight of representing those who no longer had a voice. And that night, in a small-town diner, something rare happened. Understanding, no shouting, no blame. Just growth. Asterisk. A few days later, far from the streets of Willow Creek, inside a modest office at Fort Myer, Captain Laura Bennett sat across from a man who had seen it all, Sheriff Tom Reynolds. With 20 years on the force and lines on his face that told stories of every kind. Reynolds listened carefully as Bennett spoke. What happened out there? She said calmly. Can't happen again. He nodded. I've already spoken to Carter and Hayes. They know they screwed up. Bennett leaned in. This isn't about punishment, she said. It's about perspective. Your officers need to understand what our soldiers do. What that badge means. What it represents? She slid a folder across the desk. I'm proposing a training program. Every officer from Willow Creek PD comes here to Fort Myer. They'll learn about the tomb guard. About respect. Not rules, respect. The sheriff looked at the folder, then back at her. It's a deal, Captain. 1 week later, at the Willow Creek police station, the briefing room was packed. Officers filled every chair, and near the front stood Emily Carter, not as a leader this time, but as someone still learning. Sheriff Reynolds stepped up. Starting today, he announced, we begin a new chapter. Every officer will attend training at Fort Myer. You'll learn what it means to serve, to honor sacrifice, and you'll remember something simple. Every person you stop has a story. He looked to Emily. She raised her hand. I'd like to say something. The room grew quiet. I made a mistake last week, she said. I disrespected a man who didn't just serve. He sacrificed. I didn't ask who he was. I assumed. And I forgot what this badge, she tapped her chest, is supposed to stand for. She paused, searching for words. I learned something that day. Every stop, every conversation, it's a chance to lead with dignity. I won't forget that. There was silence. Then a few nods, a few quiet claps. A change had started. Days later, Emily pulled up to a quiet home just outside Arlington. The lawn was trimmed, and in the driveway sat a familiar, worn Dodge Ram. Caleb was out front, wiping down the hood. She stepped out of her cruiser, sunglasses off, posture humble. Sergeant Marshall, she called. He looked up, calm as ever. Officer Carter, what brings you here? I was hoping we could talk, she said, maybe over some coffee. Caleb chuckled, tossing the towel over his shoulder. Just made a pot. Come on in. Inside, the house was simple. On the wall, a framed photo of Caleb in his tomb guard uniform stood out. Solemn, proud. Still, they sat at a wooden table. 2 mugs, no tension, just understanding. Emily glanced at the photo. Why do you do it? She asked. The tomb guard thing. Why choose something so hard, so quiet? Caleb leaned back. His voice was soft, but steady. Because the unknowns can't speak, they can't walk. So I do it for them. Every step, every turn, every salute, it's their voice. She nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to get it. Caleb smiled. For the first time in days. That's a start, officer. That's a start. Later that week, at the tomb of the unknown soldier, Sergeant Caleb Marshall marched to 21 steps across the marble. Every movement, flawless. Every pause, deliberate. Every salute, filled with the weight of generations. And in the crowd, no one whispered. No one recorded. No one judged. They watched, understood, and somewhere in the silence, a nation remembered what respect really means.